Hello and welcome, I'm Kate Scrivener, and today I'm going to be doing a short books recommendation video. This is inspired by Jasmine, who I believe was inspired by Haley at Bookland. It's all a little circular, but yes, I am actually doing Bookmas, so I thought that I would actually be doing a video that's more focused on the end of the year. And you know, you have that Goodreads challenge that is slowly daunting you from the corner, telling you that you'll never be good enough, and I'm here to solve you. I don't think that numbers really matter that much, to be honest, and I don't think you should have that much pressure in completing the challenge. Obviously, you should read the books that you want to, but if you are feeling a little bit stressed and or you just want to take it back easy during the end of the year, then I am here to present you with some short books to read now or whenever you want. So the first book on here is going to be Dear Martin by Nick Stone. I really love this book. I put it as one of my favorite books of last year. I'm reading it this year. I saw that reading it physically, there was some aspects of the writing style that just isn't very good. She turns into like doing it more script thing, so I almost recommend doing it in an audiobook because the story is really impactful. It tells the story of Justice, and he is trying to help his ex-girlfriend who is drunk. She is trying to drive and he's like, no you don't, that's a really bad idea, don't do that. And some cops see him and she is biracial, he is black, and so they just arrest him, and then he wants to deal with it in kind of a peaceful way, so he starts writing letters to Martin Luther King and kind of expressing his experiences at his like prep school and what it's like for him to experience things and all of this. And there's a lot of tragedy and conversation around it. I read this and The Hate You Give back to back almost, and I must say that this is my superior favorite of this. So if you're a person who loves that book, I really recommend this. For me, somehow I just said the writing style wasn't the best, but the way that it was conveyed, I think, hit me a lot more, and that's just the kind of person I am, but both are obviously really great books. And then we have Animal Farm by George Orwell. This is a classic book that I really, really enjoy. It is like 112 pages, and it just really dives into what it means to deal with dictatorship and like the oppression of men, and it's done through animals, which is kind of ingenious. And I'm not a person who likes like following animals. Like I don't think I've ever read another animal book because like I don't like movies with animals. Like I'm a sadist, I know, but just not my cup of tea. But this book is so well talked about, the expression and the development and the way that it's told in such a short period of time is just the brilliance of George Orwell, and I just highly, highly recommend it. And then for another classic book, we have The Bell Jar, again, one of my favorite books, and I can't begin to express the emotional that this book has. It follows the story of Esther, which is very much a fictionalized version of Sylvia Plath herself, and it tells the story of her as she goes on a summer internship during college years when she's 19, and it's exploration of her mental health as she deals with bipolar, and just depression and writing and all of these things in her life. And it is one of the books that deals with how I have experienced mental health more clearly than like any contemporary book ever has. And this book was written in the 60s. It also deals with suicide ideation and a suicide attempt, and those just spoke so much to how I experienced it, and I think that it was a book that will always be really close to my mind. So it is very heavy. It has a lot of scenes in a mental institution during that time, which are barbaric and electro therapy, and it's not a happy book, but it's a really, really impactful book, and I really strongly recommend it, you know, barring that it's not something that will be too triggering for you. And then next, my recommendation would be Sleeping Giants or The Themis Files. This is a file format version of a story, so it goes by really fast. The audiobooks is full cast, and it's very, very excellent. It's how I read it. It's 320 pages, so a little bit longer, but still quite short, especially in its format. And it tells the story of Rose, and when she was a child, she was biking and fell into a hole where there was a giant metal hand, and then years later, when she's an adult, she's one of the leading scientists on the study of this hand, and it has a lot to do with aliens and humans, but like a lot more on the like thematic and looking at what it means to be human and looking at the costs and the nuances of war and love and family and humanity. And it is one of just so many things. I really need to reread it. I'm just thinking the second book is my favorite out of it, but all around a really, really excellent series. And then we have Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. This is one of my favorite books of the year. I read it this summer. It's one of the longest on here. It's 352 pages, but it is entirely in verse, so it reads very quick. I read it in one sitting, and it tells the story of Jude, who is a one Syrian woman during the time when Syria is having wars and stuff like that, and she immigrates to America, and it's her story both in Syria and dealing with the loss and the living in a war-torn country, and then coming to the US and dealing with the aftermath of that and being a Muslim woman in the US. And it is a stellar middle grade novel, and it is not talked about enough. Like, people need to read this book. And then we have The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. This is one of my favorite books of last year, and this is by Kiersten White. It is 304 pages, and it is a feminist retelling of Frankenstein, sorry. And Elizabeth is such an intelligent and beautiful character with, like, emotions that she really just, her strength is in her emotions and the power of getting herself out of abuse. And it is a very heavy book. It has a lot of gore, it has a lot of abuse and manipulation, but I just really, really love Elizabeth Lavenza, and I think that it talks so well about the story, and Kiersten White does such a great job of retelling it. To change it up, I will pick another, like, more happy book, and for this we have Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. This is a graphic novel that is just, like, pure, like, sarcastic snark beautifulness. It's like a meld of medieval, contemporary, and superheroes, and it's so funny. So pretty much there's, like, these two classmates that, like, you know, may or may not have a thing for each other when they were in college, and then they were kind of deemed that, you know, one of you is going to be a hero and one of you is going to be the villain. And the one who's a villain is just, like, he doesn't really want to be a villain. And he's like, I used to have henchmen, like, we used to have game hitmen, we used to be, like, a hit and stuff. And he's just, like, so, like, unabashedly ironic about it. But then there's, like, this little girl who can shapeshift who's just like, yeah, I'm gonna be your sidekick. I want to be of the villain. And he just does not want this. And it's so funny and lighthearted. Pretty much most graphic novels will fit into the short lens. Like, I could say Saga and some of my other favorites, but this one is just pure joy, and I think that if you want to have a good smile on your face during this year, then it's a good one to go. And then we have Every Heart a Doorway, or the Wayward Children series. Every Heart a Doorway is probably my least favorite in the series. It gets progressively more my favorite as we go on. I think the last is my favoritist of them all, but this is a story of people who walk through doors, and they go into different worlds and have experiences, and every second one takes place on our Earth, about children who are at the school, and they are kind of dealing with the aftermath of being people who came back from worlds and now have to readjust to living in our world. But then there's also the people who are in their world, and we tell their stories, and those ones are my favorite, I think. But it's just a really excellent series. They're all novellas. They're all around 200-ish pages, and Jean Maurer is just a fabulous author. And then number 9, we have Girl in Translation by Jean Kwok, and this is 307 pages, and this is just an extraordinary novel that has just stuck with me. It's been almost 2 years since I read it. I read it in January of 2018, and it tells the story of Kimberly Chang, and she is from China, and she immigrates with her mother to the US, and it is horrific for her. She lives in an apartment with no heat. She suffers a lot of abuse on the hands of relatives, as well as just mistreatment from all around, and yet she continuously has the strength and endurance to go on, and it's such a beautiful tale of that. And it's also an eye-opening experience, especially of the discrimination against the Asian communities in North America, and it follows her from 6th grade until 12th grade, so it's like a long-lasting book, which I really like, being able to see the progression of people growing up. That's one of my favorite things, or like long-lasting stories. So this book is one I think that will always stay with me, and it's really underrated. Again, I'm just gonna say that, but it's so good. And then last but not least, I had to bring up like the, you know, very like specific well-known short book, and for that I have The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This is a lovely classic that is also really sad, but it is 1920s and kind of looking at the American dream and how that's not really realized, and it's tragic and it's obsessive and it's sad, and you hate the characters because they're all terrible, but they're all exploring their old world. And It's excellent. You probably read it in high school. You should probably read it again. I hit myself in the eye. Anyways, and I will leave you until next day on Bookmas. But you can follow me on my social medias. I'm much more active in talking about books on there than I am on here normally. But anyways, you can subscribe, comment. I really like my comments. And yeah, happy reading and writing. And I will see you very, very soon.